Today we're unboxing an iPhone 6 that should be running its original software version, iOS 8. I picked this one up on eBay for around $50. Let's go ahead and get it opened up to see if it's actually running iOS 8. And here we have the iPhone 6. This is in the space gray color. Here on the back, it appears to have some sort of sticker residue, and the aluminum is slightly discolored around the Apple logo. There's also some sort of gunk stuck here on the side. And it actually appears that this iPhone has a SIM card tray from a silver model. But at least there are no dents on the corners of the device. And here on the screen, the device is looking really good. I don't see many scratches on here at all. It does appear that the front-facing camera is slightly misaligned, but that was very common on these models. So let's see if this has any battery power. And looks like it does. And perfect, the device boots into the iOS 8 slide to set up screen. This was what I saw in the listing photos, and it's how I was able to determine that it's running its original version. More specifically though, the listing actually had this language selector screen showing. And from this I was able to see details like the curled tails on the A in this font. So this font is known as Helvetica Neue, and Apple only used it through iOS 8. So with that backstory out of the way, let's go through this iOS 8 setup process. And cool, it looks like we've got through activation, so thankfully there was no sort of iCloud lock present. And there we go, we get the iOS 8 home screen with a notification to update to iOS 12. So from this home screen's appearance, we can tell that this is definitely running an earlier version of iOS 8. And that's due to the red music icon here. This icon was only used through iOS 8.3, as it was changed to a white logo with the launch of Apple Music in iOS 8.4. But we can tell that this is not an iOS 8.0.x version, and that's due to this iBooks icon here that has pages curled upwards. On the 8.0 versions, the pages on the iBooks app were actually flat. Scrolling over a page, it looks like we do have the Apple Watch application here. And I believe this launched with iOS 8.2. So just based on the music icon, the Apple Watch app, and the iBooks app here, I would say that this is running iOS 8.2 or 8.3. Let's go into settings and check that. And okay, it looks like we do have 8.3 here. And I can also see that we have the 16GB base storage configuration. So this is definitely a really cool iPhone 6 to have. I'll take a second now to get it all cleaned up. And here is how the iPhone 6 cleaned up. It's looking really nice. I do still see that slight discoloration around the Apple logo and also a little bit around the camera. And of course that incorrect colored SIM tray does kind of stick out. But to cover up those imperfections, I have this OEM Apple leather case here. I picked this up on eBay for only $6 with free shipping. But I think it's going to look really nice on this iPhone 6, especially as this is a version with the red music icon. And there we go, this iPhone is looking absolutely incredible in this case. So I just took a second to fix the misplaced piece in the front-facing camera of this iPhone. And it wasn't too difficult at all. There's basically a foam ring around the front-facing camera that becomes misaligned over time. So I just carefully grabbed it with a pair of tweezers and put it back into the correct position. I also plugged this iPhone into my Mac to find the battery health. And it actually has almost 96% maximum capacity with 295 cycles. So now let's take a second to talk about what this iPhone 6 was. So this was a really significant iPhone in Apple's history. It was released in September 2014, and it was most known for increasing the display size. So while previous year's iPhones were capped at a 4-inch display, the iPhone 6 increased that to 4.7 inches. And there was also a second display size to choose from with the 5.5-inch iPhone 6 Plus. So this was a really significant year-over-year increase to the iPhone size. Prior to these iPhones, Apple was really reluctant to offer a larger iPhone. But competition with large screen devices in the smartphone market was really strong. Manufacturers like Samsung and HTC have been producing some pretty large smartphones for several years. So these large screen iPhones were really important for Apple to catch up with. But not only were the 6 and 6 Plus physically larger devices, they also had an all-new design. So where the iPhone 5S here has a very boxy and squared off design, the iPhone 6 here has a much more rounded off design. And while some did find the design of the iPhone 6 to be a bit of a downgrade, with the loss of nice details like this diamond chamfered edge as well as these glass inserts on the back panel, I've personally always really liked the iPhone 6 design. I think it's especially comfortable to hold in your hand compared to the 5S. You could get your iPhone 6 in the space gray color here as well as a silver or a gold model. And while the iPhone 5 and 5S hold the record for being the lightest iPhones ever, the iPhone 6 actually holds a record for being the thinnest. So you can see here just how thin it was. Although the very thin nature of this device ended up being one of its downfalls. So you've probably heard of Bendgate before. And that was the big controversy surrounding this device being easily bent. So it was especially bad on the iPhone 6 Plus model. There was a viral video on YouTube by Unbox Therapy where the iPhone 6 Plus can pretty much be bent in half just by hand. But it was also just something that could happen casually, say in your back pocket. And it could actually lead to functional issues too. So again, the 6 Plus especially was prone to touch disease, and that was when bending damage would occur to the logic board connectors and it would make the screen register phantom touches. And these were the first iPhone models to have a raised camera bump. It looks really minuscule compared to the camera bumps we have today, but I remember back in 2014, people made quite a big deal about this. And because the devices were larger, Apple relocated the lock button from the top of the device to the side. A design feature that I really love about the iPhone 6 is the use of curved glass. So you may be able to see what I'm talking about here. The glass actually curves downward toward the edge of the device. Specs-wise, the iPhone 6 was not a huge improvement over the 5S. It had a new A8 chip instead of the A7 in the 5S. But it was really just marginally faster, and it was still paired to the same 1GB RAM amount. So both of these models actually ended their support with iOS 12 in 2018. The iPhone 6 did include NFC for the new Apple Pay feature. And it had the same first generation Touch ID sensor on the home button as the iPhone 5S. And the iPhone 6 family were actually the best selling iPhones of all time. They were sold new for quite a long time. I remember seeing these for sale with prepaid wireless carriers all the way until 2018 or 19. So now let's talk about iOS 8 on this iPhone specifically. So there were some visual changes to this version. The first of which being this red card icon across the top of your Passbook application. There was also a new health application which was really fitting as the Apple Watch was launching right around the same time as iOS 8. And Apple now included the iBooks application as well as the podcast application by default. There was a slightly new look for the control center, and you would now see your recent contacts appear at the top of the multitasking screen. There was also a new keyboard feature with this quick type row across the top. So this would just suggest the next words for you to type. And there was now a recently deleted folder in the Photos app. And this was the first iOS version with Apple's continuity feature. So that allows you to hand off tasks you're doing on one device to another. There were also now some new widgets you could use in the notification center. Here in 2025, iOS 8 is actually somewhat usable as you can still download applications from the App Store. It's a little bit of a process though. You have to go in through your Purchase tab and sign in, but it will actually say your password is incorrect the first time. But it will then send a 6-digit code to your other devices, which you then just log in again, but put that 6-digit code at the end of your password. But by going through that process, I was able to download some cool apps and games for this device. And although this iPhone did not come with its original box, I still wanted to show the accessories that would have been included. So you got a set of wired Apple EarPods, a 5-watt power adapter, and a USB-A to Lightning cable. So this iPhone was still from the era where Apple really took care of you in the accessories department. This basic iPhone 6 design was actually reused with several future iPhone models. It was used again with the 6S. That model just added a stronger 7000 series aluminum to address the Bendgate concerns. It was used again with the iPhone 7, although that model did add larger cameras and an updated antenna design. And it was more heavily revised with the iPhone 8. That got a glass back panel for wireless charging. And that glass back panel variant of this design was used again for the iPhone SE second and third generation in 2020 and 2022. Let's take a look at the default wallpaper selection here in iOS 8. So first you had this dynamic category. These would provide bokeh dots on multiple different colors and they would move according to the tilt of your device. Next up, you had a really extensive selection of still images. I just counted and there's actually 43 here to choose from. So a portion of these were new for iOS 8. So here's a look at those. This purple flower image was used in many of the marketing material for the iPhone 6. And this wallpaper here was pretty interesting too because it was actually the wallpaper used in the beta versions of iOS 8. But a good portion of these wallpapers were carried over from the previous version, iOS 7. And I pretty much think each one of these looks incredible. This is definitely my favorite wallpaper selection on any legacy iOS device version. Although this is the default image, I actually think I'm going to change it to these snow-covered trees. Just because I think it looks especially nice with the space gray color and this red case. So that pretty much concludes my look at this iPhone 6 running iOS 8.3. I'm really happy to have this device in my collection. I would say that iOS 8 is definitely in my top 3 favorite legacy iOS versions. And the iPhone 6 was such an important device for Apple, so it's really cool to have an original, non-updated model here. Be sure to leave me a comment below with your thoughts on the iPhone 6 as well as iOS 8. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.